Okay, let's finish this. And then summer ended. Moths bounced against your window, attracted by the light of your room, a siren call in the slowly darkening sky. Just as the day was coming to an end, so too would summer. Liz would be moving back into the dorms before long. Luckily, Lee had been able to come stay for a short trip before her own new journey began. She'd officially been accepted to her first-choice college a few weeks ago. This was her last chance to see you all in person for... You flicked through the plans for the next few months, realizing that you didn't even know when you'd have them next up, have the opportunity for everyone to be in the same place again. It was hard to think that you'd likely be seeing even less of your cousin going forward, but you were delighted that she was pursuing her dreams. While you were still with each other, your family was going to have dinner together. As ever, the Holdens were tagging along too. Ooh, that tropical place. A Chinese restaurant. It was somewhere your family had always enjoyed going, ever since you and Liz were tiny. That long-standing connection made it a fitting location for a final meal out before Liz and Lee set off again. Technically, you were getting ready to go out, though your mind was only half on the task. It was a pleasantly warm evening, the kind that epitomized the vacation feeling. And you were in no mood to spoil it by rushing around. It was strange to think that summer was coming to an end, yet you wouldn't be returning to school. That pattern had been in place for as long as you could remember, and had come to feel like a natural rhythm, as inescapable as the coming of the tide. This was the first time that you were going to be able to see set your own tune. Whatever came next was entirely up to you. The future looked bright. You couldn't wait to start your new life. You were nervous but ready. It was also uncertain. It worried you. Just thinking about it made you queasy with stress. It was also uncertain. It worried you. You didn't know what you wanted to do. There were so many options, all with advantages and disadvantages, and this was the first time you'd had to make such a momentous decision. You felt as if you stood alone at a crossroads. In this changing world, who could know what the right choice would be? Mom called up from downstairs, tearing you from your thoughts as she told you it was time to head off. You hurried downstairs, hoping that the evening would be sufficient to distract you from your anxieties. Everyone piled into the car. While it was marketed as being suitable to hold 5 people, in practice it made for a very tight fit. Your mom sitting in the front were fine. You, Liz, and Lee were squished in the back, with Lee in the middle, wedged between you and your sister. But Mom was an excellent timekeeper. Thanks to her efforts, you pulled up near the restaurant on time. The process of getting out of the car was slightly easier than squeezing into it, with much less coordination required to release seatbelts than to secure them. You gave Lee a hand as she clambered out from the middle seat, then headed into the building as a group. A waiter greeted you as you entered. Ma let him know how many of you there would be in total, and he went to arrange a table that met your needs. He returned promptly to guide you to your seats. You slipped into your chair. It felt all wrong. No matter how you shifted in your seat, comfort eluded you. Everyone else seemed fine as they settled into their own seats. Your drinks order had just been taken when the Holdens came through the door. They were pointed in your direction, though with Mom waving an arm in the air it was hardly necessary. Cove and Mr. Holden came to join you at the table. As greetings were being exchanged, Cove took a seat opposite your ma. Mr. Holden took the free seat next to him.
Hi!
It's great to see you! Glad you could make it. Hello, everyone. You wouldn't believe how hungry I am. You came to the right place, then. There was some laughter, though Liz groaned playfully, shaking her head at Mom's sense of humor. Growing up, she'd have complained, and Mom would have responded by making another comment. Liz had mellowed over the years, but she still made a show of despairing at Mom's jokes. Her reaction to them had become a joke in its own right. Menus were soon passed around, and a temporary hush fell over the table as everyone read. It didn't last long, punctured by comments about what people had eaten here before, and light chatter about what people were considering tonight. Once the waiter had disappeared with your orders, Cliff piped up.
Okay.
So, I've got some good news. Kyra's making a trip out here tomorrow. Cove nodded, turning from his father to the rest of the table. Yeah, we talked about it and figured this was a good time for everyone.
Very nice.
That's great! Everyone reacted positively to the news, though Ma looked wistful.
It's a shame.
If only we'd known. Here we are having a big meal without her. If we'd waited one day, she could have joined us. Mom patted Ma on the back, gently nudging her from the realm of possibilities and what-ifs and back to the evening that was going so well. Chin up, Lee and Liz will still be here tomorrow. We'll just have to throw another get-together and keep the fun train chugging along. Ma smiled warmly, taking Mom's hands in hers. That's true. There's plenty to celebrate right now, but there will be more good news and good times on the horizon. Right, and speaking of, that's not all we've got either. Yeah. Mr. Holden's eyes were alight as he sat up straight in his chair, face angled towards his son. He barely let a beat go by before nudging Cove with his elbow, pushing him to follow up on the announcement. He was the very picture of a proud papa. Cove shied from the limelight, ducking his head down and staring at his lap as he spoke.
Well,
Well, it's just, I've switched over to working full-time instead of only part-time. Plus, I've been looking at apartments. There's a few I can choose from. He flicked his gaze up at everyone around the table, a smile creeping over his face. I'll be pretty busy going forward. Mr. Holden gripped one of Cove's shoulders and gave it a loving shake. His excitement couldn't be contained. Incredible. Cove's actually going to make it to adulthood. It's a miracle. Mr. Holden leaned back in his chair, staring up at the ceiling in mock wonder. I wasn't convinced I'd be able to rear a kid all the way to this point, but thankfully I lucked out and got the best boy a dad could have asked for. Dad. Cove blinkered his vision with his hands on the sides of his face, temporarily blocking his father from sight. Despite his genuine bashfulness, which left him unable to meet anyone's eyes after all the attention thrust his way, he was happy. Thanks. I was really lucky too. You're a good dad. Aw, come here. Mr. Holden threw an arm around Cove's neck, pulling him into as close of a hug as the seating allowed. He rubbed his cheek on the top of his son's head while Cove chuckled, accepting the affection with good humor. You looked around at the faces of the company here. You'd been on this journey with everyone here for years, seen them falter and grow, and they had watched you go through the same. Cove was leaving his family home, Liz was heading back to college, and while Lee was starting at hers. You were staying close, but it was clear you were all headed in different directions, to different destinations. Some near and some far, but it wouldn't be long until you were all going your own way. It was all too much. Though it was bittersweet, it wasn't all bad. Maybe this was for the best. You turned your head to the side, wistful, not wanting to spoil the evening with your troubles. You were glad that everyone was succeeding, but the idea of splitting up gave you a twinge of regret. These people had been key pillars in your life. Days ahead without them, no matter how bright and shiny, felt a little empty, like a theme park after closing time. New adventures were still ahead, and you could encourage that optimism. Things relaxed, and you took a sip of your drink. Lee idly tapped the table and got your attention. I'm so excited to try this place! I haven't been here in a long time. I hope it's as good as I remember. All the restaurants in the area are pretty top-notch in my humble opinion. We'll see. It was a challenge issued. Liz carried herself like some sort of professional food critic, and Mom snorted. Tough crowd, geez, Liz. Ma giggled and chimed in as well, much to Liz's embarrassment. That's right, Lizzie, geez. Oh, geez Louise! You shook your head at all the silliness. Why was your family like this? Geez, everyone burst out laughing, besides Liz, of course. She smirked. No one could ever accuse your family of being no fun. Night fell soon, after everyone finished their meals, and before you knew it, you were standing in the parking lot saying your goodbyes and packing up the cars to go home. After the last of the chores were done, your family spent more time together. The rest of the night felt like it was going by in a blink of an eye, and somehow the time came to retire to your room to sleep. You pulled your covers up under your chin and settled down for the night, getting warm and cozy. With the sounds of the ocean waves crashing a little way away, you relaxed into your pillow and let out a deep breath. It wasn't long before your eyes were growing heavy and you drifted off into a peaceful sleep. The next morning you woke slowly from a comfortable dream, finding yourself safe and warm and tucked up in bed. With a small stretch, you opened your eyes to the sun shining through the window. After waking up a little more and getting ready, you headed downstairs to find your family all gathered around the kitchen area. Good morning. You greeted them all, receiving a chorus of good mornings back in return. You nodded in acknowledgement as you headed into the kitchen to find some breakfast. A knock at the front door caught your attention, and curiosity pulled you to follow several steps behind Mom as she went to answer it. Cove was waiting there with both of his parents. Aw, she's still so pretty. Morning.
Hello.
Hi there. Surprised at that sight, Mom paused a moment, and then she pulled Kyra into a big hug. Meanwhile, you approached the doorway and flashed a small smile at Cove. Kyra, it's been so long. I know, time's been flying. Kyra's gaze slid over to you. She waved.
Hey,
Hi there, Risa. Biting your bottom lip, you nodded slightly. Hello. And you waved back a little. Then you smiled. You were happy to see her back in town. Kyra returned your smile cheerfully. Enough of standing around out there. Come on in. Mom moved aside to usher the group in and guided them to the living room. Before anyone could get settled in, Mom spoke up. You're all welcome to stay for breakfast. We still have some great spices and stuff from the farmer's market.
of course.
Yes, we'd be thrilled to host you. There were eager nods from Mr. Holden and Kyra, but Cove looked around the room filled with familiar faces before speaking up. Maybe, instead of staying here, why don't we go to the beach? A scenic picnic, eh? Mr. Holden crossed his arms and contemplated that idea happily. Excited, Kyra clapped her hands together. Oh, we could really make a day of it. Might as well enjoy the ocean while we can. That sounds lovely, Cove. Everyone else put in their own agreement with Cove's suggestion. Before long, both families dispersed, getting everything ready. Sandwiches had to be made, water, sunscreen, towels, and more needed to be gathered and packed. An hour later, both your family and Cove's were walking down the old path to the beach. The morning was already turning into a bright and beautiful day. You honestly couldn't ask for better weather for a beach trip. The moment you laid your eyes on the full view of the ocean, you stopped and stood there mesmerized. It didn't matter that you grew up there. The sight always filled you with wonder. Hey, Risa?
So?
I was thinking about calling Terry and Miranda. See if they can come too. Everyone else is pretty much already here, so... Would your family mind? I can ask them. Already you couldn't imagine any problems your mom could have with that idea. Cove matched the grin growing on your face. You were eager to see your friends join in the fun today. You made your way over to your mom's. I have a question. Would it be alright if Terry and Miranda came by? I don't see why not. Ma looked at Mom to see what she thought, and she nodded in agreement. Mom then shot a glance over at Mr. Holden and Kyra, knowing that they likely heard everything.
All right with that?
Cliff, Kyra, what do you two think? The more the merrier.
Okay.
Of course, they're welcome with me. Thanks. Delighted, you nodded and turned on your heels. Cove was still several feet away talking to Liz and Lee, likely about the same topic. With a beaming smile, you gave him a thumbs up, and the two of them must have also approved, as Cove quickly got his phone out and started making the calls. At that, you turned your attention to helping with the picnic setup. You hurried over to your mom's and helped put the rest of the food out. In moments, you noticed Cove at your side. Turning to him, your mouth pulled into a hopeful smile. You waited expectantly for what he had to say about the girls. They're gonna come. Really? Your whole demeanor brightened, and your smile beamed. They'll meet us here later today. Shouldn't be too long. I can't wait. Once the setup was done, everyone got comfortable and dug into the food. You couldn't remember the last time breakfast tasted this good, but you attributed it to the gorgeous ocean view and soothing sea breeze. The conversation shifted to what you would all do next.
In that case...
We could do a few rounds of volleyball. There's plenty of us now.
Is that all right?
Could I play? Aw, of course. Miranda brightened, delighted with the plan. Ma looked around to see if there were any other takers. I don't feel like playing. I'd have to change, but it'd be fun to watch. I could be the ref. My eyes won't miss a thing. Volleyball's a good idea, but there should probably be something happening for those who aren't a fan. Oh, I have some crafting supplies we could use to make jewelry. We could even use stuff we find around the beach to accentuate them.
Really?
What? Really? I want to make a necklace. I'd be interested in trying my hand at that too. I'll make some jewelry. Already you were imagining various designs you could make depending on what you use. Your cousin shot you a thumbs up, clearly happy with your decision. I'm game to play some volleyball. Kyra got up from the towel she was sitting on. She brushed some sand off her legs and then stretched her arms over her head.
Can do.
I'm up for a few rounds. Now that plans were settled, the group temporarily split into two.
Okay.
Okay, let me pop back to the house to get my supplies. Is there something we should do? Yes. You can start clearing out the towels for us to work at. And if you want, look around for good stuff to use.
I'm on it.
Roger that. While Lee ran back to the house, the group did as she suggested. By the time she returned, everyone had their craft area ready to work at. Lee sat down on one of the towels and looked up at everyone eagerly. She held up 2 necklace options. I hope you've all been thinking about what you want to make. I have for everyone a choice of either a chain or a threaded rope. How do I pick? All I know is that I want to put some sea glass chunks on it. There's no rush. I'll leave the strands here and you can decorate it however you want later. I think I'll keep it classy and only worry about finding a decent shell. Yeah, I'm planning on doing shells too. Sea glass, shells, driftwood, stones. I don't have a plan. After that, the little crafting club busily went to work on their pieces. Whatever they decided on using was attached in loops and were then slid onto their necklace base. Terry was immensely proud of herself when she was done. Hers was simple but gorgeous because of the striking piece of sea glass she painstakingly searched for and found. Mom decided on a medium-sized purple ring-topped shell as the centerpiece of hers, and Lee went with a few small Simnia shells. They both put their necklaces on soon after finishing them. After combing the beach several times, you found just what you were looking for. It took a bit, but you managed to make a necklace you were satisfied with. It mostly had driftwood. Your group of crafters would also cheer for the volleyball players whenever shouts could be heard coming from the court. On top of that, you would all hold up each newly made piece in the air, and the players would take a breather to applaud the creation. You really enjoyed searching the beach, trading supplies, and watching everyone make their necklaces. The crafting club was definitely a success, and you weren't the only one that had a blast. The afternoon continued to drift by, but the fun was still going strong. Occasionally, someone would head back to the house to use the bathroom, rest away from the sun for a while, or to retrieve something that they needed, but they always came back. The beach was never empty, and there was always a new conversation to take part in or another game to join. At one point, Mr. Holden even broke out his pack of cards. He roped the whole group into a few rounds of good old fish. Go fish. There was only one thing that could bring this beach day to an end, and that was for the day itself to end. Before anyone realized it, the sun began to set over the sea. As that happened, you were taking a break, sitting on your towel with your legs stretched out past it, and your feet buried in the warm sand. Shortly, you looked up to see your moms approaching. They stopped in front of you, and you smiled. Hey there, kiddo. How are you doing? Good. They both sat down, squishing you between them. Ma leaned her head against yours, and Mom started rubbing your back soothingly. Nothing more was said at first, but Ma sighed contentedly. Mom looked at you wistfully. We're both really proud of you, Risa.
True.
You grew up to be more than we ever could have hoped. Thank you. It's thanks to you, too. Your eyes started tearing up. I'm not sure I deserve any of that glowing praise. Your eyes started tearing up. It wasn't your intention, but the praise took you by surprise. Your bottom lip started to quiver. Oh no, sweetie, we didn't mean to make you cry. Ma wrapped an arm around your middle and squeezed you tightly in a side hug, and tears started running down your cheeks. Mom lightly brushed some of your hair. It's okay. I'm just so happy I got to have you as my moms. After that, all three of you were sitting there sniffling and teary-eyed. Aw. You wiped some of the tears away with the back of your hand. I don't know how we got so lucky with you and Liz. Ma reached out in front of you for Mom's hand. She gave it to her, and Ma squeezed it. We must have done something right. You stayed there quietly and contentedly, watching the sun set with your parents for a while, until Mr. Holden called out to you. He was still walking in your direction. We were talking and think we're going to take a walk down the shore. Any of you want to come? Automatically, you looked to your moms for what they were thinking. Mom glanced at you, from you to Ma, and smiled. That sounds good to me.
That's fantastic.
Yes, that'd be very nice. My legs need some stretching. Grinning, you looked back at Mr. Holden. You gave him a nod. Thrilled, Mr. Holden threw out a thumbs up and began heading back the way he came in a light jog. Hey, don't leave us in the dust. Cliff kept going forward, but flipped around, walking backwards across the sand so he could face you again. Don't worry, we wouldn't leave you without you. All right, we'll catch up. Ready to go? Uh-huh. Both of your moms held a hand out to you. Chuckling, you gave them each one, and you all strolled back to the rest of the group. When Liz was in reach, Ma used her free hand to pull her into it too. Liz shook her head, but her mouth quirked into a smile and she didn't resist. Together as a family, you followed behind the others hand in hand. Your feet squished into the wet sand as the waves rolled over them, and you didn't have a single care in the world as more and more stars began to dot the sky. Once the sun had long been out of sight, it was finally time to pack up. The closing of the day and the ever-approaching end of summer seemed to intertwine. It caused a quiet, reflective mood to blanket over the group. On the beach, Terry and Miranda took turns compressing Cove in a hug before moving on to do the same to you. You chuckled, still overjoyed that you got to see them today. I'm sorry we have to go already. My parents are here. That's okay. But still, I wish we could help clear all this up. Don't worry about it. Just thanks for coming out today. It was cool having everyone here.
Yep.
Oh yeah, I'm super glad we came. Hopefully we can do it again sometime. Nodding, you turned your attention to Terry. She wore a large grin on her face and held out a hand for a low five. You obliged.
See you later.
Take care of yourselves, buddies. After that, they walked away, waving to you and Cove as they went down to the shore. Cove waved quietly back with a small smile on his face. You waved too. It was a big wave. You hoped Miranda was right and there would be another day like this soon. Taking you by surprise, Terry jumped and twisted around. She kept up with Miranda by walking backwards. She kept the mood of your farewell light by shooting finger guns at you and Cove. Miranda bumped her with a hip. It left everyone with a laugh just before they disappeared down the bend. Risa?
Come on.
Hey, Cove, could you come here? Both of your parents were motioning for you. The two of you went to them. Tons of things ended up at the beach over the course of the day, so there was still so much to pack up. And the parents needed help. With a nod, you got to it, stuffing various things into bags and bundling them up in towels. Once things were ready to go, everyone filled their arms with as much as they could carry. Absolutely no one wanted this to be a back-and-forth kind of task. The walk back home ended up being mostly quiet. Each person seemed to be feeling the effects of the day. A cool breeze carried you across the sand and onto the road. There was a sigh of relief from what felt like the group as a whole when they arrived back to the neighborhood. Well, hello, everyone. You glanced to the side and spotted a very recognizable face walking down the road. Oh, hi, Baxter.
How are you?
Do you need help with that? You shook your head nervously while trying not to drop everything.
Oh.
If you're sure, then. I was simply heading home after getting some fresh air. The season is almost over, after all. Yeah. Baxter was only a tourist. He wouldn't be in town much longer. This might even be the last time you happen to cross paths with him. You knew that, and so did he. If you have a minute, I'd just like to say it was a pleasure getting to know you both this summer. His head tilted towards you, and he smiled warmly. Baxter offered you his hand. Used your freer hand to shake his. You waved goodbye instead. Patted his shoulder. You side-hugged. You raised your hand for a high five. It was tough with what you were carrying, but you were able to extend one of your hands a bit. Baxter chuckled and shook it. I think we did end up as good friends. I enjoyed meeting you. Good luck on your next semester at school. You didn't say anything. You studied Baxter for a moment. He was someone you hadn't known for very long, but he had made some things interesting. Baxter turned to shake Cove's hand this time. He was a little incredulous for a moment, but then Cove eventually shifted what he was carrying and took Baxter's hand. It wasn't long, but it was a solid handshake. Baxter was clearly pleased. I wish we had more time together, but it was still a nice ride while it lasted. Would happily do it all over again. Bye, Baxter. Yeah, bye. Baxter nodded and walked a few steps towards his condo. He then stopped and waved. Goodbye. Baxter sauntered away completely and disappeared inside the condo to return to his own things. His time with you and your family and friends ending. You paused for a moment, staring at where he went. But afterwards, you looked back over at the rest of the group. Lee and Liz were just going inside your house. You couldn't spot Kyra or Mr. Holden anywhere, but the door to their house was wide open. Mom approached you with an amused look on her face. Seems like you're holding up some Holden things. Surprised, you glanced down to take a quick inventory of what you were holding. Mom was right. Some of it belonged to the neighbors. Would you mind dropping it off now? Fatigue was starting to sink in, and you looked again at everything you were carrying, but you nodded. I can do it. Thank you. Cove took a few steps towards his house and stopped, waiting for you.
Good night.
Good night, Cove. I'll see you inside, Risa. Night. You caught up to Cove, and together you went over to his house. Walking in the front door, you saw Kyra and Mr. Holden busily unpacking already. Things were scattered on counters, and they were moving around each other, putting the items away. They both lifted their heads when Cove closed the front door. Hey. It's nice seeing you again already, Risa. Her teasing tone brought a light smile to your face. You hefted the stuff in your arms a little closer. I ended up with some of yours from the beach. Oh, thanks for getting that to us. You can put it, here on that coffee table. Mr. Holden pointed at the surface he was referring to, and you immediately left what didn't belong to your family there. Cove put his own things down on the floor just at his feet, wading through everything strewn about to reach his parents. Putting your family's stuff on the ground for a moment, you dusted your hands off and straightened up. You needed a second of rest and a minute to resituate it all. You went over closer to where Cove and his parents were. Kyra smiled gently at you. Thank you for hanging out with me today. It was a blast. You nodded, pleased with how things went in the end. Thank you, too.
Thank you.
Every time I've gotten to come by, it's been an absolute joy. Things really couldn't have worked out better. Mr. Holden took a step closer to you. Kyra moved aside to let him say goodbye to you. He grinned. Thanks for always being such a friendly neighbor, and not just right now, but for as long as I've known you. I didn't always make it easy, but you and your family are good people. I really, truly appreciate it.
Thanks very much.
Thanks again, Risa, so much. I'm really glad you're my neighbor. Why does it sound so final? Is everyone leaving? It's just the end of summer. You're good people, too. He smiled softly. Mr. Holden looked away for a moment and sniffled. When he met your gaze once more, he pulled his mouth into a wide, happy grin. That means a lot to me. Mr. Holden was staring at you, but his gaze seemed far away. Maybe he was looking back at who you used to be, the 8-year-old he had asked to be his son's new friend.
See you.
Bye, Risa. You smiled softly. Then Cove took a step forward. He gestured to his pile of things he had carried to the house.
Don't worry about it.
Don't worry about all that. I'll put stuff away in a few minutes. Right, I need to go do the same with my family. I figured. Cove walked you to the door and held it open. Taking one last check around to make sure you had all your things to bring home, you went into the road. He leaned his body against the doorframe, not following you out. So this is it, huh? Actually, that's not what I mean. His expression twisted and he shook his head a bit, like he was trying to banish the pensive thoughts. I'll just say bye. Bye. The words came out in a whisper, and your lips pulled into a bittersweet smile. Everything felt too final for your liking. As you walked over to your own front door, you stopped. Turning around, you spotted Cove right where you left him. You laughed quietly to yourself. For a small pause, you both stared at each other from across the street. You waved. Cove waved back with his whole arm. Night. After one more shared nod, you opened the door and went inside, shutting it behind you. A few steps in, you saw your family gathered in the living room. They were still busy unpacking and cleaning. You added the things you brought to the pile on the kitchen counter. Mom stood up, rubbing her eyes a bit. She yawned loud. I'm bushed. How about we finish the rest of the chores tomorrow? Yes, honestly, it's too late for this.
Thanks.
Please and thank you. Mom put her hands on her hips and turned to assess the room. Mom was not one who liked to leave a mess about, but she sighed.
All right.
I suppose we can make an exception to the usual rule. It's been a really long day. Liz grinned contentedly. Lee wasted no time in skipping over to you and hooked you into a side hug. Good night! I hope you have the loveliest of dreams. You hugged her back. You pulled her close into a bear hug. Lee giggled until you released her. I hope you sleep well, too. Oh, I totally will. The moment my head hits the pillow, I'll be out. Here's to us, Risa. Tonight, tomorrow, and forever. You smirked at that. Yes, here's to us. Lee stretched her arms high over her head. She yawned heavily. Oh, look at you with tired eyes. I think that's my cue to head to bed. Bye. I think so too. Have fun sharing a room with Liz. She laughed at that, and Lee shuffled off towards the guest bedroom. Before you had a chance to do anything else, you could feel the top of your head being tapped. You spun around to see Liz smirking. Nighty-night. I'm heading to bed too. It's been a long day, and I have a lot to prepare for tomorrow. Exhaling, you automatically started fixing the back of your hair. When Liz didn't immediately walk away, you smiled softly at her. Everything okay? Her gaze moved away, and you knew she had more to say. You waited patiently for Liz to compose her thoughts. It's been a good summer. It was nice to come back home. You nodded, and Liz gave you a teasing nudge as she went by. Amused, you turned and watched her go. Love you, little kiddo. You smiled back. Liz was serious about what she had said to you, and you could tell by her expression. You appreciated that no matter what, she had your back. When Liz was out of sight, Mom started up the next conversation over her shoulder. Aren't you heading up to bed too? I want to relax first. Desperately, you needed some time to decompress and clear your mind. You worried if you went off to bed now that you would end up staring at the ceiling all night. Okay. Ma came over too, smiling understandably. She pulled you into a big hug.
Love you.
Alright, you do what you need to. I love you. When you were done hugging Ma, Mom pulled you into another hug. Their actions, basically handing you off to one another, had you laughing jovially.
I love you.
I love you so much. You're the best. Aww. Ma's eyes sparkled from your compliment. Mom pulled you into another hug. Good night, kiddo. Sleep tight. Good night, sweetie. Night. After that, your moms headed off towards their bedroom down the hall. You were about to turn the other direction when you heard Mom's voice. And don't let the bed bugs bite. You heard Mom chuckling as you watched them go in with a smile. Time had passed, but you weren't entirely sure how much. Sighing, you sat up on the couch. It was a good rest, and all of your tired muscles felt quite relaxed. You got up, planning on going to bed, when something out of the window caught your eye. Your feet brought you right in front of the large windows spanning the length of the back wall. You stared out into the hills behind your house. Something inside told you that this was the right kind of night to take a trip out there. You went over to the front door, and stepping over the threshold, you gave the living room one last glance over your shoulder. Then you shut the door behind you. Silently, you made your way to the poppy hill. With light steps in the dark, you walked across the hills behind your house. Up ahead at the very top, silhouetted beneath the night sky, was a familiar figure already waiting there. See, if they gave me the option, I would have said social anxiety and stayed inside. But I mean, this game is all about Cove, supposedly, right? So we have to have a Cove ending. It didn't surprise you in the slightest that Cove had also chosen to visit the spot tonight. Smiling, you wondered just how he always got there first. You even had the advantage of living closer. Then again, and maybe it was only in your mind, but somehow Cove was intrinsically linked with this place. After all these years, it would be weird to scan this horizon and not find him there, as surreal as the shore without the sea. The distance between you was growing shorter by the second. Hearing the grass and earth crunch beneath your feet, Cove turned. A grin spread over his face as he saw you. He wasn't shocked at your appearance there either. You took your place standing behind him on the crest of the poppy hill, looking out over the ocean. Same as you'd done countless times since he'd first arrived, when you'd found him on this very same spot. Risa. He had officially broken the silence, the spell that had held you both in place. You looked at him expectantly. There's something I've always kind of wondered about. He cocked his head, giving you a sidelong glance. What did you think about when we met? I was just a kid you'd never seen before, bawling his eyes out on the hill next to your house. He chuckled. His eyes drifted toward the sea beyond, before flicking back to you. The way his gaze pulled back to you made it clear that he was genuinely invested in the topic. Luckily for him, you remembered what initially struck you in that moment. It was as if it had only happened to him yesterday. Well, I remember noticing your very bright green hair. Cove burst into genuine laughter at your reply. I guess that's fair, it did kind of stand out. Sighing a bit, you continued to reminisce about that first meeting. I also remember feeling bad about what was happening. I remember that too. You ran a hand through his hair and you knew his line of questioning wasn't at an end, even before he spoke again. Do you remember what you thought about me, as a person? Was I annoying or mean or... I didn't think you were very nice. You kind of scared me, to be honest. You're alright. Gotta admit, I didn't think much of you. I didn't know what to make of you at first. I don't really remember anymore. You're alright. Cove nodded, accepting your answer without question. Cove's hand drifted to the scar on his arm, his fingers unconsciously gliding over the mark. It was much less noticeable than it had been when the neon pink cast had first come off, shrunken gradually over the years as his body healed, then dwarfed in comparison to his growing body. Still, his fingers came back to it without thinking. He gave a half smile, not meeting your eyes. I feel bad now. The thoughts I had were, well, considering what you were thinking, I come across as a lot worse of a kid. You didn't like me? No, it definitely wasn't that. Cove lifted his head up, finally committing to meet your eyes fully once more. I remember you that day. I remember it really well. I don't think I'd ever be able to forget. I can picture the way you looked back then when I first saw you standing right there. I still know the expression on your face when you chose to sit with me in the grass. He chuckled self-derisively, interrupting his own monologue. You scared me at first. I figured I'd be left alone out there until I had to face my dad again, and then suddenly another kid appeared out of nowhere. It was startling, but I got over that fast. You were a strange person in a strange place, but in that moment you were exactly what I needed. Somebody I could talk to freely about what was happening and how it made me feel. And you listened to me. You stayed with me. He sighed, and then bit his lip as he gave a small smile. I was a little bit spoiled growing up. You let him continue. He looked up again, seeking clarity for his thoughts in the expanse of the night sky. What I'm trying to say is, when I was younger, I viewed myself basically as the center of the universe. I didn't even imagine it wasn't like that. Things didn't simply happen. That would be weird, according to my little kid brain. It made far more sense that everything in my life had a specific connection to me somehow, right? I mean, a lot of little kids feel that way, I guess. He sought affirmation in you, wavy brows raised as he tried to explain his childlike logic. So, at the time, you almost felt unreal. Like you weren't just anyone. Some other kid who happened to live in that neighborhood with your whole life that wasn't connected to Cove Holden. No, to me, you were there so that you could find me when I was lost. I kind of expected it all to vanish like a dream when that night was over. I would wake up and everything would be the same again. I'd be back in my bed at home, my real home with both my parents. The future was something I couldn't picture anymore. I didn't know what school would be like when I went back, or the table where I'd eaten breakfast the next morning, or anything. And if I couldn't imagine it, how could I think it was something actually happening? I couldn't grasp my new reality. It was too big for me to hold all at once. So I never thought I'd see you again. You didn't say anything. Silence dried up the conversation, Cove's words echoing only in your mind. You didn't know how to follow on from that confession. Cove sighed contentedly. His voice was as delicate as the petals on the poppies which crowned the hill. He tilted his head up, thoughts lost in the sparse clouds above. I wonder how late it is. I guess it doesn't really matter. My dad is fine with me being out whenever. You could use your phone to check the time. You could still text your dad about what you're doing. You could still text your dad about what you're doing. I'm gonna message my moms. My moms might care, but I don't feel like telling them. You wanted to make sure you messaged your moms about what was going on. Quietly nodded. Mr. Holden was content, giving Cove all the freedom he could. Are you gonna lay in the grass now? Wow, how'd you know? I just thought you might want to. With a chuckle, Cove plopped down onto the ground and laid on his back. His usual way of spending time here. You sat down. You took your own spot next to him in the grass, brushing the blades of grass aside with a bit with your hand. The both of you fully settled in to relax on the hill. It felt like just the beginning of one of your nightly outings, but then you realized the sun was peeking out of the horizon. Cove spoke up with a disbelieving tone. It really was late. Your neighbor wasn't a stranger to being awake at dawn, however, not like this. He was normally an early sleeper, early riser. This unexpected sunrise particularly awed him. The two of you watched on silently as the sun began to light the world. He eyed the hill sprawling up before you, and down below where the wild hill and nature gave way to civilization. Time to go home. It was a nice night, but we can't stay forever. Well, you simply smiled. With a small nod, Cove got to his feet and began his descent down the poppy hill. You watched him go. The world began to fade and blur. You were absolutely ready to get into bed. And before you realized it, that's where you were, comfortable and content, wrapped in your soft blanket after a sleepy stroll. Your eyelids dipped, but you felt good. You were relaxed. Everything that had come before this had reassured you of that. You were confident that when you opened them again, things would be okay. And just as suddenly as sleep came, it was over. A consistent buzzing of your phone had stirred you. Through bleary eyes, you checked out what the news was. There was a lot of it. Morning was gone, and it was squarely into the afternoon. With that came plenty of interest in your upcoming plans. Moms Liz and Lee wanted to go into town at some point. Plus, Terry and Miranda had both gone crazy in a group chat, sharing various texts and images to your amusement. There was always something going on, it seemed. But family and friends were waiting. More memories could be made, so you pulled yourself out of bed to meet them. Life takes another step forward. Ooh. Oh, it's the ad. Haha. No relationship ending. Family relationship ending? Friend relationship ending. Casual ending. Moving forward ending.
The day is new, the sun is bright. Like a gentle breeze, I feel at peace, I feel at ease. And I hear the birds all sing their songs. I wanna sing along, and like the ocean flows, I'll see where I can go. Winter, spring, summer, fall.
Such a chill song. It's fun.
No matter how the seasons change, I love the sun, the snow, the rain. Our life will change. Our lives will change. And the sun shines brightly in
was fun. Step 4? There's a step 4 coming. What? That was fun.